BookTube, welcome back to my channel. My name is Delancey and today I am doing my June wrap-up. So I read 5 books for the month of June. I did some physical books but also explored the world of audiobooks. It was a good reading month. I gave a lot of 3 to 4 star ratings. So let's just get right into it. The first book I read for the month of June was Helen Hoang's The Kiss Quotient. This is an adult romance novel. It's also Helen Hoang's debut novel. This is the story of Stella Lane, and she is a very successful, I'm going to pronounce this right, econometrician, and she has excelled all throughout her professional life, but she feels like she has been lacking in the romance department, specifically in physical intimacy. So she decides to hire Michael, who is a male escort, and well, it's a romance novel, so you know where it goes from there. They fall in love and blah blah blah. I don't know what I was expecting out of this book. It is a adult romance novel, and this was my first time reading a book from that genre. I naively thought that with adult romance, it was like mostly rom-com with a little bit of sex scenes, but it's like a lot of sex scenes with a little bit of rom-com, you know? Which is totally fine, but I just didn't know that, and it was quite shocking at first. This book also had 2 tropes that I'm usually not a very big fan of. There was a lot of insta-love, and I felt like the majority of this plot was driven by miscommunication between the 2 lovers, but I still really liked this book, and I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's because I really liked the characters, and when I found that Helen Hoang had just published a second book in the series that's all about Michael's cousin Kai and his love story, I was like very torn, because although reading The Kiss Quotient just spoke to me that I'm not really a big fan of adult romance, I like really want to read The Bride Test. So good on Helen Hoang for packaging a bunch of different things I'm not a fan of into one book and still holding my interest and making me want to read the rest of the books in the series. So I don't know, a very surprising and odd experience, but I'm currently in line right now at the library for The Bride Test, so we'll see how that one goes. The second book I read for the month of June was Sabaa Tahir's A Torch Against the Night. This is the second book in the An Ember in the Ashes series. Like I said in previous videos, I have read the first book, An Ember in the Ashes, back in January or February, and I liked it, but I wasn't very compelled to pick up the second book. But I, at the beginning of June, had downloaded the app Libby, which is a really great resource for checking out audiobooks via your library. And I saw this one was up for grabs, so I thought I would just go for it. I'm really glad I did, because this series really picked up for me in the second book. In the first book, we follow Elias and Laia in this fictional world that is very inspired by the Roman Empire. You have Elias Viturius. He is top of the echelon, a fantastic warrior, head of his graduating class at this military academy called Blackcliff. And then you have Laia, who is a scholar slave. She's at the bottom of the food pyramid. And although their lives couldn't be any more different, they both feel very trapped in their roles. And the first book is all about them chasing freedom and realizing that their destinies are very intertwined. The second book, we continue to follow their adventures, but we also get a third perspective, which is Helene, and that is Eliza's best friend from the military academy. If any of you have been following me long enough, you know that Helene is easily my favorite character in this series, and probably in like my top 5 favorite fictional characters of all time. I just think she is so badass and so cool. I could not imagine living a day in her shoes, and I think Sabaa Tahir does a really great job at writing very compelling, complex, realistic characters. If you ever want to talk about Helene or Harper, you can just slide into my DMs and we can talk for hours about it. It's totally cool. So I ended up giving this book a 3.75 out of 5 stars. It's teetering between 3.75 and 4, mostly just because of my experience. Like I said, I listened to this book on audiobook, and the audiobook was good, but I just feel like with epic fantasies like this series, it probably would be better if I read it in physical form. The audiobook was fine, but some of the voices were a little cringy. The way that they voice elderly characters or fae creatures, it was just like kind of shrill, and I had to like turn down the volume a little bit. But that has nothing to do with Sabatihir's writing or the story at all. That being said, I'm working my way through the third book right now, and of course I am listening to that on audiobook as well, so that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, 3.75 out of 5 stars, a really great series, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who loves fantasy. Moving into the third book, I then read Morgan Matson's Save the Date. This is a light, fluffy YA contemporary. I feel like this book could be made into a Netflix movie and would star Noah Centineo, if that kind of gives you the vibe. I originally picked up this book because I do have a lot of weddings coming up that I am flying out to for different friends, and I wanted to get kind of in the wedding mood. But this book is not so much about weddings as it really is about family and like a coming of age sort of story. This book takes place over the course of 3 days. We follow Charlie, who is a high school senior and the youngest sibling in this huge family. Her oldest sister is getting married, and she decides to hold the ceremony at the family's old home, which Charlie is really excited about because for the first time in a few years, all of her siblings are going to be under the same roof again. Of course, this is a light, fluffy contemporary, so everything goes wrong at this wedding, and we follow Charlie as she tries to pick up the pieces and hold everything together. At the same time, Charlie is really struggling with holding on to the past. She loves all of the memories of her childhood, and she's frightened to move out of town for college, and she's struggling to keep all of her siblings together as they feud and grow older. I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars just because I found it to be very relatable. Charlie, like I said, is holding on to the past. She's frightened of the future. She doesn't like big life changes. And although I've already gone off to college and I'm at a different phase in my life, I do know what it feels like to fear change. I'm going through big life changes myself right now, and I really resonated with the overall message of the book, which is the more you hold on to the past, the more you miss out on the future. Another thing I really found relatable in the story was that Charlie sees the world very black and white. She has these people in her life that she holds to such high regard, like her parents or her older brother or Jesse, who is this older boy that she's always had a crush on growing up. She paints these images in her head like they are these grand people who can do no wrong. And she slowly figures out throughout the book that the world isn't black and white. It's quite gray, and even the people that we really admire and are really drawn to, they are human at the end of the day, in both good and bad ways. Growing up, I definitely had to learn that lesson myself, and it was just really refreshing and cool to see a character go through something that I personally have gone through as well. With all that being said, this book was a little unrealistic at times. Like I said, it's a wedding gone wrong, and a lot goes wrong. A little bit of too much goes wrong, and I would be more surprised if something actually went right. That would probably be my only critique, is that to cut back on all of the mishaps, it was a little bit repetitive at times. Overall though, a really sweet, heartwarming tale and just a lot of fun. And the last 4th and 5th books that I read for the month of June were books 2 and 3 from the manga series A Silent Voice. I have the 4th and 5th books with me that I'm super excited to get to and read. I'm saving them for my plane trip that I have next week, but I'm like dying. I want to finish this series so badly. This series is by Yoshitoki Oima. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. It's a very sweet story, a redemption story. It's about a boy named Shoya, and he bullies a deaf student named Shoko all throughout elementary school, to the point where Shoko has to transfer schools because the bullying has just become so much. Shoya thinks it's a great big joke, but eventually his own classmates begin to turn on him and bully him just as ruthlessly as he bullied Shoko. As Shoya grows up, he realizes just how cruel he was to Shoko, and he vows to make it up to her. He learns sign language, he tracks her down, he tries to find friends for her, and just make up for all the lost time that he caused. In the 2nd and 3rd book, we are introduced to more characters. My favorite of the new characters is Tomohiro, who is a friend of Shoya's, and he's definitely the comedic relief. I'm so excited to finish this series and to watch the movie adaptation over on Netflix. If I haven't mentioned it already, I gave these last two books both a 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's just such a very well executed redemption story, and it's great representation as well. These books have gotten me so much in the mood for manga, so if you have any recommendations for other manga series that are similar to A Silent Voice, I think the genre is called like a slice of life, then definitely comment down below and let me know, because I would love to continue reading these kinds of books. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me. Those are all the books I read in the month of June. If you have any comments, if you've read any of these books in June or in previous months, or if you have any recommendations for me, I'm currently working on my July TBR. I will be participating in the Reading Rush, which previously known as Booktubeathon, and I can't wait. I'm also participating in a contemporary readathon with a bunch of other new booktubers here on YouTube. So any and all recommendations are welcome. I definitely have my work cut out for me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!